Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and this is the headline. Nigeria nationalizes South African companies. Okay, it hasn't happened, but it's a scenario that people are beginning to talk about. So let's ask a simple question. What happens next? Most South Africans will probably say, oh, well, that's Nigeria's problem. Many Nigerians would say, no, that's South Africa's problem. But they would both be wrong. Now, imagine that you are a manager of a South African company in Lagos. Yesterday, you were interviewing people for new jobs. Then your phone rings. Head office is frozen recruitment. The interviews are cancelled. Not because the business is failing, not because the candidates did anything wrong, but because two governments stopped trusting each other. That is how these things spread, not with dramatic events, but with thousands of ordinary decisions made by ordinary people. Before politicians have finished arguing, families are already living with the consequences. That's what geopolitics really is. Political arguments don't stay in parliament. They end up around ordinary people's kitchen tables. Whether this ever happens isn't really the point. The question is, are governments thinking far enough ahead? What do you think?
As South Africans, we are deeply concerned and ashamed that nationals from other countries have in recent months been subjected to discrimination and ill treatment. I repeat, as South Africans, we are deeply concerned and ashamed that people from other nations, some whose leaders are here, were treated badly and were even forced to leave the country under threat of violence.
The South African government appears so reluctant taking responsibility for its own institutional failures. Now, let me break it down. South Africa says it has spent about $18.5 million repatriating foreign nationals. The government says the money covered transportation, temporary repatriation centers, staff overtime, and other operational costs. And now South Africa is asking Nigeria, Malawi, and Ethiopia to reimburse some of those costs. Now, let's be clear. South Africa has the right to enforce its immigration laws, but this isn't the question. The question is, who should pay for the consequences of a system that failed long before this crisis began? What caused a country to reach a point where mobs, not the state, were driving people out? Because this didn't begin with an orderly government operation. If an immigration system is functioning properly, how do you end up with an undocumented population large enough to require centers and staff working overtime? Just so you know, in February, South Africa's own Special Investigating Unit uncovered widespread corruption inside the Department of Home Affairs. Investigators didn't just describe isolated corruption. They said South Africa's immigration system had effectively become a marketplace. Visas and permits were being sold. Officials were accepting bribes. Fraudulent applications were being processed, and investigators traced more than 181 million rand in financial gains linked to fraudulent visa applications. So let's be honest, South African Home Affairs failed in its duty, and when the citizens took that failure into their own hands, the state failed again by failing to protect many of the people who became targets during the violence. This entire crisis was the result of institutional failure. So why should other African governments be asked to help cover the cost of a crisis that was made worse by corruption inside South Africa's own immigration system? And there's another question that deserves an answer. Why are only Nigeria, Malawi, and Ethiopia being asked to pay? What is the actual criterion? Is there a bilateral agreement? Is there a specific legal provision? Is there an international framework that allows South Africa to recover these costs from certain countries but not others? Or were these three governments simply the easiest ones to bill? Because that distinction really matters. This whole thing looks less like cost recovery and more like shifting the financial burden of a domestic policy failure onto other African states. If corruption inside Home Affairs helped create this crisis, and if the state failed to protect many of the people caught up in it, shouldn't South Africa also accept responsibility for the cost of those failures? Thank you all for watching and drop your thoughts in the comments.
Now, Lady Pando said that it is unacceptable to build an Afrikaans university. I've got two questions. Question number one, if a community privately raises the funds to establish a university in its own language without any government subsidy, how is that unacceptable? Question number two, what is stopping you from doing the same thing? What is stopping anyone else from doing the same thing? Remember, people can either pass down trauma to their children or they can pass down knowledge and wisdom to their children so that their children can also learn how to build.
Stop also blaming March and making it seem as if March and March is the reason why people are losing jobs. No, it's not March and March's fault. It's the South African economy's fault. There's a lot of things that are happening. Investors are pulling out of South Africa in terms of businesses. They are not investing with their businesses anymore in South Africa because there is not much going on. They don't make enough money from the current shops that are going on, that are happening. So it seemed as if the patriots, when they were telling us that they're busy getting people's jobs, in Spa, they employed 14,000, they in a shop. It seems as if maybe Baskamela manga, maybe a manga, maybe it's not the truth, maybe Nababazi with the Baschelani. They are just telling us anything. Because there is no ways. The unemployment rate keep on increasing. Mara, we hear that foreigners are taking jobs. So the foreigners that are going, so that the foreigners that have been leaving the country, that means they left a job for some South African. So where's the South African to close the gap in these unemployment statistics that we keep on seeing? These statistics, they never go down. They always go up. And we thought maybe some of us maybe were tripping by being so negative, like they say, against March and the patriots. But it seemed as if it was not negativity. It was just us being genuinely asking genuine questions like, are you sure you are getting people jobs? They were saying we're negative when you're asking.
Ridiculous headline. Teacher salaries must be cut in half. Dude, have you ever spent time in a classroom trying to discipline 30 to 60 learners at a time while they're being protected by the Bela Act and you're trying to do your job, which is teaching? But you are so swamped with admin and doing things that are not actually part of teaching. And then the minister says, well, we are going to cut the admin for teachers. Dear Minister, when is that promise going to happen? Leave our salaries alone. Parents can't even handle their kids for the whole holiday. They cannot even handle their kids for the whole holiday. They beg us to take their children back. Teacher salaries must be cut in half. You must be joking.